You're live.
All right. Good afternoon, Carol.
Good afternoon, Council President.
Council Member 5. Won't be informal, huh?
Let's be informal. Let's be
Okay.
informal. It was a long night.
It was a long night. We had a 9-hour budget meeting. Maybe you and I took one break each.
Yeah.
Heard from a lot of folks, yeah. But we passed that budget.
We did.
We made it in this morning for our committee meeting
Yes.
starting at 9:30.
Bright and early.
But we wanted to make sure we connected with community to debrief what happened on our budget.
Yeah, I think it's important. One of our goals and one of the things that we've mutually discussed is transparency and openness for our administrations and just really making this the people's house. So that means constantly being in conversation with the residents of our districts and throughout the city. Our town halls are one of the ways that we did that. I had several conversations with community and our different neighborhood coalitions, as well as our budget town halls. And so this is just another opportunity to have a more in-depth conversation on things that we can't agendize, right? So some of the conversation that we want to have with constituents are not neatly in our staff reports, neatly in our agendas. So this is an opportunity to get more granular, as I said.
Exactly. And even though our council meeting last night on the budget was almost 9 hours, we didn't really have a chance to say everything I think we wanted to say
Right.
to tell the full story of our budget and where we landed. So I'm grateful to have this opportunity, even though being human, I am tired. I
Yeah.
admit
Yeah.
it is hard to chair and have my attention that focused for 9 hours and then try to fall asleep, wake up for a 9:30 finance committee meeting. So I'm asking for your grace as we have this conversation because I'm a little tired.
And that's understandable. And so thank you, and I'm giving grace. Give the president some grace. Having to focus for 9 hours on this kind of detailed financial information is exhausting. And she's here and she does it gracefully, and she does it respectfully, regardless of what the barbs and the ammunition coming at her stacks up to be. She does it, and she does it with kindness and patience. And so, yeah, you got that.
Thank you, and that's the tone that we should have as your elected representatives. So, should we start with a little bit on this budget process before we get to where we landed?
Yeah, let's talk about the process.
Okay, great. Well, maybe starting with sort of the official city process. And, as a reminder, back in 2014, a bunch of community organizations, Oakland Rising, I believe the League of Women Voters and others, they inserted public participation into our consolidated fiscal policy. So I'll try to do this briefly. The budget process starts in November and December with our Budget Advisory Commission, which is a volunteer board, doing a budget survey to survey the concerns, interests, needs of residents. At that time, the city staff, the mayor's office, with the administrators start to draft the budget. It happens really early. And so that's why in the past few budget cycles, I've told people, even though the council decides, get to the mayor and the administration early because they actually draft what we work off of. Fast forward, the mayor presents her budget May 1st, and then we engage in town halls, although some of us do engagement even before May 1st. And then by the middle of June, the council president has to present a set of amendments for the council to consider so that we can adopt a balanced budget by June 30th. But maybe stepping back, let's talk about how we both engage the community because I think that's important. And then I want to talk about how as council president I engaged with our staff as well.
So that's a great segue, and I want to just re-articulate what the council president just said, which is the first steps are the mayor drafts the budget and then the council amends the budget that the mayor drafts. But one of the ways that we as council members reach out to the community are to have budget town halls. And so that is an opportunity for people to weigh in directly with their desires, their wishes, their goals, their hopes, their dreams, for what they would like to see as amendments to the mayor's budget through the city council members. And I just don't do those budget town halls. My constituent liaison is consistently fielding community requests from the individuals that she talks to on a daily basis. And this is like 7 days a week, in addition to all the phone calls and emails that we get, hearing from people in our business districts, from our residents, from our community organizations who want to weigh in on what they would like to see in this budget process. One of the reasons you keep hearing us reiterate that this is challenging is because of the deficit that we're experiencing. It is a historic deficit that has caused us to even look at the input that we're getting from our constituents a little differently. It's caused some challenges, but it's also given opportunities for us to be creative and thoughtful and more imaginative than we've been in the past, but also be more intentional, more intentional about how we use very critical resources. So for instance, in my budget town hall, we initially had a meeting at Evergreen Baptist Church. Shout out to Bishop Brandon for allowing us to use that space. And we actually had a follow-up because we didn't have enough time to go into details about how we would manage the dwindling resources that the community is used to, quite honestly, trying to fight over to figure out how we allocate to everyone. So we had budget town halls, we did a budget survey, we had people reach out to us on our social media pages and through many other channels, and we incorporated that into a hierarchy of what people wanted to see and what they wanted addressed through the budget process, which informed our policy directives that we also built on from the last biennial budget. I feel like I'm saying a lot. I'm trying to put everything in there, Council President Bass, but those are some of the ways that we got input from the community.
Great, and I'll just add for District 2, in my role, I represent the entire city. Well, we all represent the entire city, right? We all represent the entire city. Serving as council president, I'm very mindful of representing the entire city and District 2. And so we had our first budget town hall, we had our first town hall in January, just a couple weeks in after my re-election. And then we had our official town hall in May. We run our town halls multilingual. District 2 is incredibly diverse, like really over 100 languages spoken.
Wow.
So we do our town halls in usually 4 to 5 languages. I really believe in participatory education and trying not to talk at people.
Right.
Just really trying to engage. And so at our town halls, we do a lot of small group work, sometimes by neighborhood. So those town halls really help to inform our priorities. Like you, I have amazing staff.
Yes.
Shout out to Deborah, who leads our constituent work, Amaya, Cynthia, and Eric. All of us are in touch with our constituents every single day. And so all of those emails, calls, we do our best to track all of the social media too, but the official channels through our city email, our city phone numbers, really give us insight into how we can work together. Our office hours as well. So all of that helped inform things. Let's see, I wanted to make sure we also mentioned that, the budget process also includes our capital improvement program, and with the passage of Measure U, we have millions more to improve our facilities, our parks, etc. That's a separate process that Public Works and Transportation lead. And the exciting thing about that process is that it's been evolving over time. So there's more equity baked into that process. And it starts with community surveys that then lead to projects that are scored and that are proposed into our budget. So in addition to the service budget that we approve, there's also a capital improvement projects budget that we approve.
And I just want to talk a little bit about that since you brought it up, the capital improvement budget for the district that I represent include improvements that will be occurring at the Infirmary Park and Pool, as well as the Malanga Arts Center. I think it's really important, especially in times of deep gentrification, that we preserve our histories and our culture, especially of populations that are being pushed out. And so I would want it to be really intentional and thoughtful about our cultural districts in District 3, especially in the downtown area where you see a lot of cranes in the sky that are building spaces, and oftentimes people of color, specifically Black folks, don't feel like they have a home or a place anymore. So that's why I felt it was really important to invest in those spaces. And I also wanted to say just that we, the council president and the council president's budget team, don't just look at our own individual districts, as you stated. We look at the fabric of the entire city when we're thinking about these budget processes, and want to make sure that we're being equitable across districts, because everything doesn't impact everyone in the same way. And I think, as we've said countless times, this budget includes something for everyone in every district.
That's right, that's right. Since we're talking about capital improvements, maybe I'll share a little bit about District 2. And like you said, I think it's really important to underscore we could not please everyone with this budget because of the historic deficit. And at the same time, everyone got something from this budget. Every council member in district got something from this budget.
That's right.
And since we are talking about capital improvements, we didn't have enough time, I think, in the budget hearings to really dig into that part of our budget. But I really want to lift up, because our D2 residents have been organizing literally for years to make sure that we are preserving our parks, our rec centers, our fire stations. And so I want to lift up in particular the ongoing investment and the ongoing advocacy around Lincoln Rec Center. The Friends of Lincoln Square Park have been advocating literally for decades, and Lincoln Square Park is, and Rec Center, that is a rec center in Central Oakland. And I want to be really clear that Central Oakland has not had any of our rec centers renovated in 2 decades, whereas others in West Oakland, East Oakland, and North Oakland have.
Right.
And in this particular rec center, it serves Chinatown and downtown. And you know, because we're here, there's all these new high-rises. And so this is an area of Oakland where we have more and more residents. We have to be able to serve those residents. And right now, it's a beautiful place. Come for town nights on Fridays. Come to Lincoln Town Nights on Thursdays. And it's multi-generational. At any time of day, because of the amazing Gilbert Gong who runs the rec center, there are programs for youth, teens, seniors, adults. It's really beautiful. So I'm excited that we will continue the investment so that we can have an updated rec center to serve the amazing number of people who visit, not just from the area, but from around Oakland and out of town. We're going to update the rec center and make it a resiliency hub. In addition to that, also in Central Oakland, the Friends of San Antonio Park have been doing amazing work. They did a deep community engagement around the master plan. The draft master plan was just published. And because of the community's advocacy, there is a feasibility study in the capital improvements program to address the feasibility study of doing what the community wants, which is a community center and a resiliency hub with a library. And Central Oakland, again, is one of the places that hasn't been invested in terms of our libraries. Our library master plan from years ago said the one place where we need a library is in the San Antonio area, right by Roosevelt Middle School. So really exciting that's moving forward. We got some seed money for Clinton Park in Little Saigon, yet another area that's been disinvested in. A rec center burnt down. It's still being renovated. And then finally, our oldest fire station 4 in San Antonio. I mean, it was built when our fire trucks were carried, drawn by horses. The firefighters sleep in the old hayloft. They work out in the basement.
Wow.
Those conditions are not good for our firefighters.
Right.
Bless you for the incredible work that you do, Oakland firefighters.
Yeah.
So we got some money in the budget to update that firehouse. There's money pending in the state budget also for the firehouse. And that new firehouse would be co-located with Macro so that Macro would have a long-term home. So there are incredible wins in our capital improvements program.
I agree. And we had a 9-hour budget meeting. I feel like we could have a 9-hour just conversation on all the things in the budget because it is really detailed. It is a very in-depth process. And I just want to just list one of the things that really stood out for me was the involvement of the traffic justice coalitions, the rapid response traffic coalition folks that are pushing on us. And the reason I'm lifting that up is because they've been very vocal over the last couple of years around making sure that we are making space for the changes that need to happen and how we see our roads and our streets. And they want us to acknowledge that public safety includes how we look at traffic violence and collisions. And we have some our districts overlap. But I just remember going to a vigil of a father who lost his life when he was hit by a vehicle that was speeding through 3 different city council districts. And that speeding ended when he collided with a father who was on a bike with his 2 small children. And one of the reasons I bring that up is because we have funds in this budget to address traffic calming measures for every single city council district. And that came through some of the work that we also did with our constituents. And one of the ways that will continue to engage with the public on how to program those dollars in a participatory budgetary way. So we did our budget town halls, but I'm going to be coming back to the coalition that helped me form my thinking around transportation measures and how we ensure that our streets are safe, to be saying, okay, these are our high injury networks in District 3. I need your support in working with the Department of Transportation to prioritize where these dollars should be spent and what could be done affordably and efficiently, effectively throughout the district to create greater safety. So that was something that really stood out for me. In addition to all of the funds that we put into housing and homelessness measures, I don't know how much we should get into the details right now because I don't know who's seen I'm a Virgo, but I'm sitting here with a Virgo. And so I know there's a structure that we should be following for how we have this conversation, so I want to be mindful of the time and what we should be discussing.
I think
in order.
Yeah, I feel like we should let people know what's in the budget. But before we do that, I neglected to talk about how you and I, Councilmember Kaplan and Councilmember Jenkins, worked with our staff. And Councilmember Fife, you were on my budget team in 2021. That was also a very difficult challenge.
That was a
challenging budget.
Yeah.
We had a deficit at the time, not as large, but we were also wrestling with the recommendations from our Reimagining Public Safety Task Force,
right,
and all of that.
And we've fallen down, right? From my perspective, we haven't done as much as I would like to see to make sure that the recommendations from the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force are being incorporated into our work. And it's not because that's not what we want to happen. It's the challenges, the pushes and pulls, and the dynamics internally. There's so much going on, and with limited resources, it makes it difficult to do everything that we want to do. But we are still laser focused on making sure that the information that came out of the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force gets implemented. And that's so we're making strides towards that.
We absolutely are. I would love to just do a shout out to our staff and talk about how we work with staff, and maybe we can share with folks how we worked on our priorities. So housing, community safety, and then, our neighborhoods, all of that. So I just want people to know that the way that I have approached working on the budget as council president has been not only the community engagement that we already talked about, but also making sure that we're not only working with the city administrator and the finance department, but we're checking in with all of our department heads, or as many as we are able to schedule. And so that started with our 21 budget. We carried that through with this 23 budget. And so I want folks to know that it's been really important for me and our budget team to make sure we are talking directly with our leadership here inside the city of Oakland, because there's tremendous leadership. We have talented, committed, dedicated staff, and we have reached out to each of them to the extent we can schedule meetings with our crazy schedules to say, hey, what do you think of the mayor's proposed budget?
Right.
How should the council partner with you, knowing we have limited resources, to ensure that you can meet your goals, have the staffing and capacity that you need. And so I just want to say that our budget, our proposed amendments, was not only informed by the community, but informed by the incredible talent that we have here within the city of Oakland. And, oftentimes we'll also have ideas, and
Right.
we're really, under this new administration, we are really trying to work as one Oakland and not be siloed, and make sure that if we have ideas, we're working with the mayor's office, working with the city administrator's office.
Right, because we're not always on the same page, but we know that the more that we communicate with each other, the easier it is for us to come up with solutions that everyone can get along with.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why there were so many links in the packet to all of the different departments and their presentations, because I don't think that this was done before.
It's never
Nikki.
been done. So this particular year, when we did an orientation for the 2 new council members,
Yeah.
granted, we were also coming back into City Hall. Councilmember Fife, you did not benefit from this, unfortunately, but this year, right, in January, we had 4 sessions of orientations where we heard from each department, got to know each other, and I think that carried into our budget process where we had those study sessions, all that information. We are really trying to make sure we're working together, getting information out to the community as well.
And I think what we will see, because we're still fairly new in this process, we've had 2 cycles of it now, where we're incorporating the information that we get from our department heads and our different staff at the staff level, is a more cohesive government where we are talking together, where we are working together, and there aren't these factions. That's something that has plagued the city of Oakland for a long, long time, and we're finally beginning to be able to move past that. And what people will see, what the residents of Oakland will see, the state of California and the world will see as better outcomes overall for the city that we plan to last for a long, long time. That is the benefit of this new way of doing things in the city of Oakland.
That's right. So let's get into the budget. Let's talk about housing. Like we said, while we may not please everyone with this budget because literally we had to close a $360 million historic deficit, there is something in this budget for everyone. And so also as chair of our Life Enrichment Committee, tell us what we were able to achieve with housing and homelessness, and maybe step back and talk about what we did in the last budget cycle and with Measure U so that we could be where we are today.
That's a great point, because part of the reason that we were able to add money to our housing budget that we have not been able to do over the last 8 years is because of passage of a ballot initiative, which is really just the new version of Measure KK, which was a previous infrastructure and housing bill that was passed in 2017, I think. 2016, implemented in 2017, where we had more funds to address some of our issues around affordable housing, homelessness, and infrastructure. It's when we were able to create a brand new equity-informed plan to address paving throughout the entire city of Oakland. We're still working on that paving plan right now, but those funds initially came through Measure KK. There was a county level initiative similar, Measure A or Measure A1, I don't recall.
A1 on housing.
But those funds, I was not a council member at the time, I was the director of an organization, but it enabled us to create the Preservation of Affordable Housing Fund and allocate $12 million with my organization in partnership. This is what an inside outside looks like when you're partnered with missions aligned nonprofits and city elected officials. We created a fund that was able to save the homes of several individuals that would have faced homelessness from eviction from individuals that were trying to displace them from their current home. So
that was in 2019, so
right.
There's a trajectory.
It's a ramp up. Yeah. And so this is what electing a certain, once again, missions aligned people from community into elected spaces. It's a partnership that Council President Bass and I have had over the years. So we passed the ballot measure in 2016, implemented 2017, passed the PAF with $12 million for housing acquisition for co-ops and community land trusts, saved homes, and now we passed another ballot measure. And this is allowing us to make sure that we have the funds to do this new work that we're going to do. Someone made a comment last night that affordable housing is not the same as homeless housing, and we are making the distinction, which is, we can get more into why it's important to have housing and homelessness connected so that our exits from homelessness are into permanently affordable housing. But the $216 million that we are able to invest through our new ballot measure on these issues around housing and infrastructure will allow us to create the resources that we need to address some of Oakland's biggest challenges.
And we've never invested that much money in affordable housing,
Period.
full stop.
Full stop. So we have plans, and the council president and I have both been working in conjunction, which is also a new factor that hasn't happened in a long time, with the county of Alameda to make sure that we are in deep partnership to address something that's not just the city of Oakland problem, right? There's been talk for years about the lack of collaboration between the city of Oakland and Alameda County. And with this new administration, we're not having it anymore. And so I'm proud of the work that we've been able to accomplish right now with the Board of Supervisors to make sure that our plans towards activating these funds that we have been able to pass with the voters' approval through our ballot measures, not just with Measure Q, Measure U, and we're not even talking about Measure T right now, will allow us to create the units to get people off the streets into affordable housing. I'm not just talking about unsheltered people, but our city workers who are also often struggling to live here and struggling to afford housing in the city of Oakland. We're addressing all of those factors in this particular budget. So we added an additional $8.8 million in the budget for housing and affordable housing solutions and to address homelessness. We added money for tenant protections because we know that we are facing an eviction cliff. I think the number of evictions filed in May have tripled the number of evictions that were filed in the months previous, in the April preceding the pandemic. And so we've got to be prepared because once individuals are falling into homelessness, once they end up on the streets, it makes it that much more difficult to get out. So we want to make sure we're preventing the problem before it happens. And that's why I'm really, really happy that so many speakers also came out to support the council president's budget and the work of the budget team by supporting the $1 million that we added to prevent homelessness. I will be honest that a smoothie just came in the door for me, and I'm really interested in having that right now. So I'm going to turn it over to our council president for the ways that we're supporting our economy.
Yep.
I'm a little hungry and parched, so I'm going to grab this smoothie.
Will do. That was a great summary of what we're doing on housing and homelessness. And this is sort of how it works. When we're on the dais or doing these things, we also have to meet our human needs and make sure that we don't get hangry, because I know I get hangry.
You get hangry?
You may not see it on the dais.
I don't see it. It's so calm.
That's because my amazing staff makes sure that I can discreetly drink something or eat something.
And shout out to Brianna for always bringing me cucumbers on the dais, and Cynthia too for like, did you have water? Did you eat?
There we go.
Thank you.
Actually, I would love to talk about community safety before we get into supporting arts, culture, small businesses, and all the other parts of our amazing community. Councilmember Fife, thank you for kind of sharing the trajectory going back to 2016 around housing and homelessness. You know, we also know that like throughout that period, under past administrations, homelessness has grown exponentially.
131%.
Exactly. Housing unaffordability has grown exponentially. So we are now in a situation where we actually have the resources, that the coordination with the county I'm very hopeful about to address the housing and homelessness crisis.
Because I didn't touch on the acquisition work that we're going to do too, because we put in money for appraisals for vacant.
That's right.
That is so critical. I mean, a lot of people didn't know that I've been working in Oakland for decades before 2019, when a lot of people recognized me for the Moms for Housing occupation. But that told us at that time that there were 4 vacant units for every one unsheltered person living on the streets of Oakland. And that was one of my main priorities coming into office, is to address that. And one of the ways we do that is through the acquisition of vacant parcels and vacant properties. It costs about $800,000 per unit to build a new unit in the city of Oakland right now because of construction costs and building and things like that. But with acquisition, we can curb some of those costs and diminish some of those things to make it more affordable and accessible to build. Because some people that are living on the streets, so many of them are homeless because they have had issues with health care and have been made homeless through bankruptcy and ended up on the streets because they didn't have access to affordable health care. And far too many are seniors. And so they're on fixed incomes and couldn't afford an $800,000 new brand new unit, a market rate unit. So we've got to look at the acquisition and conversion to what's affordable for the people who have little to no income at all. And some of the budget addresses that as well. I'm sorry, I just had to.
That's okay. Drink your smoothie and I'll talk for a while.
Go.
So in terms of community safety, prevention, and healing, I think it's also important to acknowledge here in Oakland, for decades, community organizations and leaders have been pushing for police accountability, for transforming our safety system, for making sure that our budget reflects our values and actually supports the things that keep us safe. And we know that's really starting with prevention, right? Making sure that people's basic needs are met. So that work has been going on for decades. And, you know, in terms of me and my position as a council member, since I started in 2019, a big flashpoint was in 2020 and the national uprising after George Floyd was murdered, the racial reckoning that happened. It certainly was a flashpoint here in the city of Oakland. You know, we partly responded by creating the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force. I want to thank those hundreds of volunteers who did incredible work really digging into what are the problems, what are the solutions, especially as folks who are impacted by the criminal legal system, impacted by violence. Councilmember Fife, you and I passed a resolution shortly after the recommendations were published in 2021, prioritizing 12 things. Mm-hmm. And we have made progress on those 12 things. There's still a lot more to do, obviously. And I want to be very honest that that task force was hella hard. And you participated as a private citizen,
yes.
You know,
and you facilitated it. Bless your heart.
Because those were some hard meetings.
And they were long, and I just came to some of the meetings and I was just like, wow, this is a lot. This is a heavy lift.
Right. And to be clear, one of the reasons that made it hard was that the administration at the time was not bought into the fact of working towards transforming our community safety system and expanding violence prevention and civilianizing police and having alternative crisis response and really making sure that we're addressing the root causes and the basics that people need and making sure that we have the appropriate response when people are in crisis.
That's right.
So we've only been, 6 months within this new administration. So we are just getting started. We are literally, because we have inherited so many structural problems and racial inequities, we are just getting started. So I want to make sure people know that because there is a trajectory, not only for our housing and homelessness work, but for the community safety work. You know, the Reimagining Public Safety Task Force, you know, the uprising after George Floyd was murdered, that can be like one sort of benchmark for us to move forward. And so we think about that in 2021, where in our budget team's proposal, which was passed by 6 of the council members in 2021, we made a bold move to not increase the police budget, to not add new police academies at the time so that we could invest in violence prevention and alternative crisis response. And I want to say that that was really important because in the 21 budget, because of the 21 budget, we now have a much more robust violence prevention program, engaging a bunch of community organizations. We have macro up and running. We have been able to civilianize certain police functions like special events and traffic enforcement. We are on the verge over the next year of civilianizing internal affairs. So we are laying that foundation. We have already audited the 911 calls, and so
Right.
we know that the majority of those are not for serious and violent crimes and could be diverted to other police departments. And so all of that means we are expanding a comprehensive approach to community safety. And I want to be really clear, and you and I feel this every day because we text about it.
Yeah.
Every single day there is something that happens. On Lakeshore was robbed again. Again, how many times has that happened?
Yeah.
There have been times where along the Blade, East 15th Street, where sex trafficking was very prevalent in a community where there are neighbors and schools and churches until we install traffic diverters. Community members would reach out saying there was gun violence. There was inappropriate activity happening on their doorstep while they were trying to walk their kids to school. Like, there are all kinds of things that happen in every part of Oakland, every part of our district that is not acceptable.
Right.
And, I want to say that with this budget, we are going to be able to maintain and expand community safety on several levels. And because we heard loud and clear from amazing organizations doing violence prevention work, our budget team put forward $2.1 million to help increase violence prevention grants, because what we put in 2021 was one time. This is also one time, so we still have ongoing fundraising to do. But our team put in $2.1 million, and because council member called and the community pushed us, we added $750,000 on top of that.
Right.
So to all of the folks working on violence prevention, healing, we appreciate your work so much. It's so critical, and so we are really proud that last night we added $2.85 million into our 2-year budget.
Nikki, that just brings up for me, I know we're talking about the concrete wins from the budget and just the budget process overall, but I think it's important to touch on our philosophy and our politics regarding public safety. And one of the reasons that we think it's important to invest in alternatives is because we know that what we have has not worked, period. In fact, it's been created. So this criminal justice system or criminal legal system that we have has been manufactured in order to keep people incarcerated. And so it starts from not investing in Head Start and ways and things that we have made priorities for our budget team, as well as just our partnership on the council, but divesting from communities just throughout. And we see this in every city, in every state. We see this globally. When you don't invest in people, those people will eventually take what they want or what they need. And I remember when my youngest was attending Manzanita C, a bilingual school in East Oakland. There was a lockdown one day, and we found out that a person had robbed a store, and it ended up being a young man, but he robbed a store for diapers. And when he was arrested, he said that he was just having trouble being able to just get the basic necessities to feed his newborn and to clothe his newborn. We live in a country, we live in the 4th largest economy in the world. And if California cannot figure out how to ensure that people have access to living wage jobs, to affordable housing, to decent public education and accessible health care, we will continue to create what we see on these streets. And that is why we are so intentional about breaking that system. Now, that does not mean by any means that we are going to condone or accept when people hurt other people to get their needs met. That is not acceptable. But we are doing our damnedest to create the conditions so they don't have to do that. So we have a lot of people saying that that is woke, but what it is it's compassionate, and it is intentional and thoughtful about why people are doing things in the first place and who's doing those things in the first place. Because that BS about wokeism and trying to be altruistic is nonsense, and it's a diversion from the real problems. The real problems have been created, and it's systemic, structural racism, classism that is at the heart of why these conditions exist, and we are in place to break that. There are people who want that status quo to stay in place. Watch them, because we are trying to change the conditions to ensure that we are building a safe and robust city from the ground up. So that means investing in real public safety solutions. And it was really moving to me when one of the, I think his name is Ricardo from Courage, came up and spoke and said, our violence prevention specialists, they don't have bulletproof vests and guns, but are going into some of the hardest hit neighborhoods in the city of Oakland and telling people, don't pick up that gun. We know you want to retaliate. We know you want to engage in behavior that's only going to exacerbate the problems. We have come from that. We're coming from being incarcerated. This is not a road for you. Here are resources that can divert you into a different direction. And the police officers that I talk to, and I have the best area captains, Lisa and Clay, you are, I mean, when I call, you handle the situations, and you make sure that you are working with community and you are doing your best to address those situations. But every time I'm in the field and I talk to an officer who may be at an encampment, who is trying to make sure that our city workers are safe and that the people who are living on the streets are safe, they say, you know what, Councilmember Fife, we need an investment in more social services. Hands down. I have not talked to an OPD officer that has not said we need to invest more in community. So I just wanted to add that, because you have a lot of naysayers who are trying to distract from the issues and saying it doesn't make sense to talk about root causes. We always have to talk about root causes until they don't exist anymore. That's right. I just wanted to add that little piece.
Wow, there's a lot there. There's a lot I want to say. Since you shouted out Ricardo from Courage, I want to shout out Andrew from Tribe.
Oh, what I said, Manzanita, see, our kids were at Manzanita. That's where I met. And that was like a decade ago. Mm. He was organizing and putting it down way back then. So love you, Andrew. Yes, that part.
And I texted Andrew. I said, Andrew, your comments last night, they moved me. They moved me to kind of work it out with a hard decision. It was really hard to reduce our investments in IT after we were hacked.
Let's talk about that.
Okay, let's get back to it. So, but Andrew and Tribe, when I went to town nights at San Antonio Park, which Tribe hosted, I met some of the young people that have been with Tribe, and they told me their own stories about, like, they were not going to school. Right. I mean, it was getting serious because they were not going to school, but Tribe really supported them to get what they needed to be engaged, to make it through school, to get a job while they were, in school, and just really focus. And, this one young man I spoke to, he's probably on his way to college.
Wow.
And so that is where the work starts.
And that is how you change
basic things. Exactly. And so, I do also want to shout out, we're not going to get there overnight.
That's right.
But I am working for a world where, for our grandchildren,
That's
7
right.
generations ahead,
that's right.
That pie chart of our general fund can be invested in our youth, our seniors, our parks, our libraries, cultural affairs, because it will not be necessary to have this traditional policing structure.
That is right.
That's what we're looking forward to, and it's at every level of government. It starts with systemic racism, and then it's like the federal and the state government divesting in social housing.
Exactly.
I know that will trigger you
to
say a lot of different
Don't
things.
get me started.
You might have to do another live. Divesting in job creation, right. All of those things. But I do want to say also that the officers I work with, they just do amazing work. Working with my office, my staff, our community members, they're really tuned into what's happening and problem solving.
Yeah.
And that's really what folks want. So we are going to continue to transform this system, investing in the root causes, violence prevention and healing, alternative crisis response, and making sure that policing works, because we want people to get a response if they call 911.
That's right.
To have those crimes be solved.
That's right.
All of that stuff. Now, let's move on because
Okay.
we just have a little bit of time to talk about economic development.
Okay.
Small businesses.
Shout out to all the folks who came out to talk from the Mandela Cooperative, from Restore Oakland,
Yes.
about the investments. So grateful, and that's why Measure T was so important.
That's right.
But talk about, I know Tash has come to several.
The Real People's Fund. Thank
Tash
you.
has come.
I joined some of their
Oh my goodness.
meetings.
I mean, it was really good to see folks turn out and talk about what it means to have an investment in facade improvements,
Yes.
their own public safety measures that they would like to see,
Mhm.
what safety means to them,
Right.
and how we can support small businesses. And so we listened to that, we took that into consideration, and we incorporated that into what we were doing in the budget. So shout out to the People's Budget Committee who came to speak and who also lent their voices to this process. That was really critical.
Very critical. So not only did we add money to continue the facade improvement program, we also added some funds to activate Franco Gawa Plaza,
Right.
and on Wednesday we'll be looking at some funding to do more activation of public spaces. We are investing $1 million per year for community safety ambassadors in our business corridors.
And I think it's important to say the business corridors who made sure that they had their voices involved in this process too. And so I have several in my district, you have several in yours.
Right.
And so we heard directly from them about what they needed to be safe. And they wanted an investment in additional safety ambassadors. And so we heard you when you reached out to us and you talked to us about what those needs were. So there are very critical areas in my district, specifically around Jacqueline and Square, where there are a lot of incidents that occur on a regular basis. And so this is one of the ways that we are addressing those.
That's right. Shout out to our arts community. We got a petition signed by how many people?
Oh my God, thousands.
Okay.
They brought it to me and they're like, here, Councilmember Fife, we want to present this to you in Life Enrichment. And thank you for that. Thank you for that.
And they pushed hard in 2021. Yeah. We did a one-time investment of $1.3 million for cultural affairs. We were not able to sustain that, but we're going to keep fundraising. And in this budget, we added $300,000 for cultural affairs grants. We unfroze a program analyst for the cultural affairs division. We love our arts community. There is so much benefit from our arts community. So shout out to all of y'all.
It makes Oakland, and so we wouldn't be able to attract a lot of the attention that Oakland gets without our creative community.
Yeah.
And I remember in previous budget cycles, we had to shut down the entire council meeting when it was budget time. I'm not going to get too much into that history, but it's because our voices weren't heard. And even though we don't have the resources that we want to have, that we want to distribute to this community, we don't have to shut down community meetings because artists' voices aren't being heard. Because if we had the funds, please believe me, this is a council that would fund most deeply this community because they are the fabric of our city. So when Council President Bass talks about the fundraising that we're going to do, we are being very intentional to go out and get those funds to bring back to make sure that our creatives have what they need to keep creating.
That's right. Yeah, and there's, again, there's something here for everyone. Our libraries are strong. We're supporting our seniors, Head Start. Both of us were involved in the Democracy Dollars program, getting that on the ballot, getting it passed. Like our friends, we are disappointed that we can't do the full-on Democracy Dollars program, but we are so glad, and shout out to Councilmember Kaplan because she helped us identify literally $5 million in this budget. Some expense reductions because our debt payment to the Coliseum is lower, as well as some more accurate estimates because of land sales that we are going to do. So that means that we were able to do a lot, and we are supporting the Public Ethics Commission,
right.
Unfreezing a staff person, giving them some money so that they can just really begin to implement the measure that will lead towards the robust engagement of our Democracy Dollars program.
Yeah, Rebecca, to be honest, she's clutch. She came in with $10 million in the last budget cycle. She is our resident historian for the city council as the eldest in terms of the longevity that she's been in the city of Oakland and city council, and was really, really invaluable in making sure that those funds were available in the council president's budget to reprogram for use in the city of Oakland. So shout out to her.
And shout out to Councilmember Jenkins, his first Oakland budget process, but he was on the Peralta board, knows his stuff, chairs our finance committee. You know, I have to say he really impressed me because he was like, we have to think about all of Oakland throughout this process and
That's right.
representing his constituents.
Right.
So, you know, he had a really strong role in this budget process too. You know, shout out to him.
Yeah, it was a great team, great team. So, yeah, I feel like there's 20 million more things.
There's so many more things.
It's still really high level.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
yeah,
I want to say what's great about this is just being to be a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
To just kind of talk a little bit about what this work is really like. And I also feel like we have to also make sure that more of the truth gets out there. You know, I think this a lot, but there's just so much going on in our council meetings, whether it's something from the public or even something from someone sitting on the dais. Just because you say something out loud does not mean it's true.
That's absolutely
right.
Correct.
And so I do want to at least say, we heard your concerns about the reorganization that the mayor proposed. And I hope that if you were not listening to the mayor's chief of staff, Lee Hansen, at the meeting last night, describing the reorganization process, please look at the video and listen to it.
As a matter of fact, what I will do to make that more accessible to the public is I will clip that portion of the explanation of that reorganization because it was thoughtful, it was informative, and it was concise, and make that available and shareable on our social media pages so people can go directly to that because it is important. And Absolutely. If you have questions about that reorganization, definitely stay tuned and let our offices know. But it will be coming back through the city administrator's office to study and review. And there will be a report done later this year, beginning in September. I believe this, I think we said that as the first report, and there will be those ongoing reports as well. So this is not something that's just being done in a vacuum. We are at a time in this city that we've never experienced before, and we have to be thoughtful about how we approach what those solutions are. So while there are challenges, there are also opportunities, and we are taking this moment to take advantage of those opportunities because we love and are committed to this city and being the amazing world-class city that we know it is, regardless of all these people from other cities across the bay, across the bridge, across the country, just like talking down on Oakland. We're here to stay and invest and make it as good as we know that it is. That's why we've raised our families here. That's why we have history here. We ain't new to this. So we didn't just pop up and decide to leave. People put us in these positions to represent the constituents, to do the transformative work that is so necessary right now. So we have an opportunity, and we are going to seize the time because now is the time to do what we need to do to benefit all of us here. So, love y'all. Just saying.
And what could I possibly say after that?
Oh,
well, I guess last night when I presented our budget,
I was so
didn't have much to say. I feel like I don't have much to say.
Okay, I was supposed to talk about housing and stuff like that, and then I'm like, dang, Rebecca and Nikki said everything. What am I?
Okay. Let me close by saying, you opened up by saying this is the people's house.
Yes.
I really believe it is true that with the set of folks we have in this house, all branches of government, obviously a new mayor, an administrator, a different council, me in this role as council president, and coming from the backgrounds we come from, working in community and the values that we have, you know, with participatory democratic government, listening and implementing, I'm really hopeful. You know, with all the challenges, there are opportunities, but in this people's house, we're going to lead with racial equity and we're going to lead with community engagement. And so as we implement this budget, as the decision 1 year from now on the reorganization happens, because it's a decision 1 year from now, that's what we approved last night, that it will come back to us a year from now after a year of study, we will be better off.
Yes.
You know, this is the moment to recognize we have not been delivering the services that Oakland needs.
That's right.
And so we are going to implement this budget in a way that is going to drive filling staff positions,
That's right.
that is going to listen to our residents, and that is also going to very much build internally the culture by listening to our staff as well as our leaders, build the culture inside the city of Oakland with our amazing City of Oakland team so that we can recruit people who love Oakland as deeply as we do, who are committed to Oakland, who will be laser focused on what are the services we should be delivering, because Oakland deserves so much.
That's right.
So much love to Oakland. I'm so just honored to have this time and space with you and to represent.
Right. So we are speaking, but we're not giving speeches. We're about that action. Y'all gonna see.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you, Council President Bass. Thank you for everybody who tuned in. And if you didn't tune in, you can watch it later. So until soon.